All right, let's jump right into this explainer. If you've ever found yourself wondering how major global investors actually evaluate the sustainability of buildings, property developments, or even massive real estate investment trusts, you are definitely in the right place. Today, we're unpacking the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, or SASB, framework to see exactly how these environmental and financial risks are standardized and measured.
Now, these aren't just arbitrary rules we're talking about. The guidelines have highly credible global backing. As of August 2022, the International Sustainability Standards Board, the ISSB, which operates under the widely recognized IFRS Foundation, assumed responsibility for the SASB standards. They steward these standards to help investors assess sustainability-related risks globally. So what we're looking at is a unified global push to seamlessly align sustainability disclosure directly with financial reporting.
So where does real estate actually fit into the global economic picture? Under the Sustainable Industry Classification System, or SICS, entities are categorized based on their specific sustainability risks. And notice that real estate doesn't just sit on its own little island. It's firmly categorized right inside the broader infrastructure sector, utilizing the specific SICS code IFRE. Which makes perfect sense, right? Buildings are the physical backbone of our economy. They're the infrastructure where we live, work, and manufacture. Their efficiency directly impacts the entire infrastructure landscape. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to decode the IFRS standard, tackle managing energy consumption, navigate water risks, look at influencing tenant impacts, adapt to climate change, and then wrap it all up with the bottom line. Okay, Section 1, Decoding SICS Code IFRE. Let's look at exactly what this standard expects asset owners to track and disclose. The framework rests on 4 core pillars, and investors aren't just asking vague questions about being green here. They want hard, quantitative data. IFRE 130A is all about energy management and consumption. 140A tackles water withdrawals and scarcity risks. 410A looks at how landlords actually influence tenant sustainability impacts. And 450A demands an analysis of physical climate change adaptation. Everything an entity reports rolls up into these 4 distinct codes.
Section 2. Managing energy consumption. Buildings consume a massive amount of power, so standardizing how we measure it is our first major pillar.
The big question here is who actually controls the energy. The standard splits this into 2 buckets. You have the base building, which is the energy used for central services and common areas. Think lobbies and shared elevators. Then you have the tenant space, which is the lettable floor area occupied by tenants. Often, the energy in that space is purchased directly by the tenant, so it sits totally outside the landlord's immediate operational control. Understanding this distinction is absolutely fundamental because it dictates who is responsible for the costs and the efficiency upgrades.
Now, to accurately measure performance over time, the framework uses a really strict like-for-like calculation. Because think about it, if you buy a massive new skyscraper, your total portfolio energy use is going to skyrocket, which completely skews your efficiency metrics. Instead, this strips out all the noise. You only include properties held for the full current and prior reporting periods. You completely exclude newly acquired properties, sold assets, and buildings under major renovation. And interestingly, no correction for vacancy rates is needed. It gives investors a pure, unadulterated look at whether the existing building stock is actually getting more energy efficient year over year.
You also have to be completely transparent about your data coverage. Entities have to disclose exactly what percentage of their total floor area is actually being tracked. Are you capturing the whole building, just the base building, or is data totally unavailable due to tenant privacy barriers? Plus, for the area you do have data on, you must disclose the total energy consumed in gigajoules, breaking down exactly what percentage comes from grid electricity versus renewable sources.
Section 3, Navigating water risks. Shifting from power to flow, let's see how the standard handles water, which is increasingly critical these days. It's not just about how much water a building uses, it's about where it uses it. The standard requires entities to disclose the percentage of their portfolio located in regions classified as high or extremely high baseline water stress, specifically as defined by the World Resources Institute's aqueduct tool. 1,000 cubic meters of water withdrawn in a rainy, low-stress climate presents a vastly different risk profile than 1,000 cubic meters withdrawn in a severe drought zone.
Because of these geographic disparities, entities have to explain their actual on-the-ground strategies to mitigate these risks. Are you facing volatile water costs or sudden regulatory restrictions? To combat that, are you using closed-loop recycling systems, setting absolute and intensity-based reduction targets? This forces a discussion not just on conservation for conservation's sake, but on how these practices defend the property's financial viability against real-world resource constraints.
Section 4. Influencing tenant impacts. Let's bring in the human element and talk about how the standard approaches lease structures.
Think about this for a second. Who actually controls a building's carbon footprint? It's kind of a fascinating dynamic, right? The real estate entity owns the physical asset, sure, but it's often the tenant's daily operations that completely dominate resource consumption. The landlord could install top-of-the-line, high-efficiency windows, but if the tenant runs their servers 24/7 and cranks the AC all day, the building's footprint remains massive.
This brings us to a huge hurdle in the industry, known as the split incentive. Historically, if a landlord paid for a green capital improvement, say an upgraded HVAC system, the tenant reaped all the financial rewards through lower monthly utility bills. That left the landlord with the upfront bill and zero return on investment. The IFRE standard looks at how entities overcome this by tracking the percentage of new leases that contain cost recovery clauses. These clauses align financial interests, allowing landlords to invest in efficiency improvements and legally recover those costs from the tenants over time. A real game changer.
Beyond that cost recovery, submetering is a huge focus. Tracking the percentage of leasable floor area utilizing submeters is critical because when tenants are separately metered for their own electricity and water, they're financially incentivized to reduce consumption. The standard also looks at qualitative factors like, do you use third-party green lease templates? Do you share consumption targets with your tenants or set minimum sustainability requirements for their fit-outs? This is exactly how the standard measures a landlord's active, contractual influence over their tenants' behavior.
Section 5. Adapting to climate change. How does the physical environment impact the long-term resiliency of the asset itself? Now that 1% legally defines a 100-year flood zone, literally an area of land with a 1% or greater chance of flooding in any given year. The framework asks entities to impartially quantify their exact leasable floor areas sitting right inside these flood zones. But it doesn't just stop at identifying the risk. You have to outline your long-term adaptation strategies. How are you analyzing systemic portfolio exposure across regions? How reliant are you on property and flood insurance, which is a huge deal given shifting costs and subsidized programs? Are you actually making physical investments in asset resiliency so the building can withstand the extreme weather events modeled in these climate change scenarios? Section 6. The bottom line. Let's zoom back out and ask why standardizing all of this across the global infrastructure sector is so critical.
This quote, directly from the standard's introduction, perfectly hits the nail on the head. Tracking energy consumption, mapping water stress, restructuring leases, quantifying climate risk, none of this is just an environmental box-ticking exercise. It's fundamentally about financial materiality. These specific IFRE metrics reveal risks and opportunities that directly affect a real estate entity's cash flow, its ability to secure financing, and its overall cost of capital. Better environmental management directly correlates to increased tenant demand, lower operating costs, and long-term asset value appreciation.
So is your real estate portfolio just existing, or is it sustainably structured to thrive in tomorrow's infrastructure landscape? Understanding and applying the IFRE standard gives you the exact quantitative and qualitative lens to answer that very question. It moves the conversation from vague sustainability claims to rigorous, comparable financial accounting. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and I'll see you in the next explainer.